Welcome to Inner Compass, a podcast where we navigate through life struggles, especially things that has to do with motherhood, its connection, and anything that affects motherhood. On today's episode, we'll dig deep into the unseen forces that shapes motherhood. Today, I'd like to challenge everything that you thought you knew as a parent, because the truth is, how we raise our children is deeply influenced by how we were born, how we were raised as children, as well as how we're shaped by the society as a woman. My name is Lovette Lafwa and I am your host on Inner Compass. Often like to think that mothering a child is a choice that we do based on the things that we think is best for them. And that is how every woman, if not 100% of women, think. The truth is, most of the times we are only just repeating a pattern that we have known all along, even from our first breath. Now think about this. A woman in labor is told to stay still, listen to her doctors, not be difficult, and we often jump into this automatically because we do not want to be labeled as difficult, or we don't want to be seen as somebody who cannot abide by rules. And also, because she is in a most vulnerable state, we as women, we are in a very vulnerable state, we adhere to comply. Let's go back. When it comes to motherhood, what is it that we expect from our children? Submission, compliance, yes, just to mention a few. When I go into my innermost parts, in my inner compass, I begin to see that this is the same concept that most of us are forced to abide by, whether by the hospital, whether wherever we are, when we were growing up as a child. It's important to understand that how we are treated during pregnancy isn't just a moment in time. This leaves a blueprint on how we nurture, discipline, and emotionally bond with our children. Therefore, today, we're going to unravel this hidden script. How does birth trauma affect mother's ability to emotionally connect with our child? How does a lack of autonomy in pregnancy affect the way we discipline our children? And most importantly, how do we break this cycle? So just sit back and relax, because this is not just a conversation about birth. It's a conversation about power, about identity, as well as about healing. So let's dive deep right in. All right, let's start from the very beginning. Birth. Now, whether we acknowledge it or not, birth is not just a physical experience. It is an emotional, psychological, as well as spiritual event. A woman's birthing experience shapes her mental and emotional state even long after the baby is born. Now, research in prenatal psychology shows that when a woman feels unsafe, unheard, or even disrespected during labor, she is far more likely to experience postpartum depression, anxiety, and difficulty in bonding with a newborn. Now, I want you to take some time and let me paint two different birthing scenarios for you. All right, let's go to scenario one, which is the powerless birth. Imagine a woman who goes into labor excited and ready. However, the moment she steps into the hospital, everything is taken out of her hand. She's told that she must lie down, she must be monitored. In other words, she's obliged to accept interventions that she wasn't prepared for. Now, at one point, she raises concern and say, hey, I don't want a certain kind of procedure. But as we know, the medical team insists and say, hey, that is the best for the baby. 90% of the time, the women feel pressured and they comply. Yes, they comply, not because it's what they want, but it is what is expected of them. Now, hours go by, she gives birth, she feels really drained, not just physically, but she is also emotionally drained. In my experience, These women, instead of feeling empowered, she feels like something has been done to her. Scenario 2 is a supported birth. Now imagine a woman, she walks into a birthing center, surrounded by the people she trusts, midwives she'd seen, doulas she'd seen, and every other caregivers. And now she's in labor, all excited as well. She moves freely, she makes decisions on her own, or tell the birth keeper why she wants this certain thing to be done or not done. Her caregiver explains everything that is being done and why. They give her options and her choices. So at the end of the day, she decides, she feels safe, and she's in control. So 90% of the time this baby will be born, she feels like she has given birth to her child. So she has done something and not someone has delivered her baby. This makes her feel empowered. 2 different scenarios, 2 different emotional blueprints. This is really a very powerful one. Mother 1 walks out of the hospital feeling very powerless and not even noticing it that she feels powerless in most cases. She therefore carries this energy into how she's parenting. Powerless, tired, exhausted, weak, name it, whatever you want to name it. I am guessing some people by now would have turned up their phone or the laptop. They don't want to hear what I'm saying. But the truth is, I'm not just making this. These are not just speculations. They're backed up by research. There are several studies that have shown that when a mother experiences a traumatic and disempowering birth, she is more likely to struggle with emotional regulations. She would also experience more difficulty in breastfeeding, and this is a big one. She is going to have harder time responding to baby cues. These are scientifically proven. All right, let's take a step back. This conditioning doesn't start in the delivery room. It actually starts in childhood. I want you to take your time to think about how girls are raised. We're raised to be polite. Many times directly or indirectly, we're taught to prioritize other people's comfort over ours. We are also taught that being good means being quiet, being obedient, and also be agreeable. Therefore, by the time this young girl becomes pregnant, she has spent all her entire life being trained to comply. This is the reason why when a doctor tells her during pregnancy to do something, she almost don't question anything about it. There are women out there whom I know who would go and do their own research, but I'll be very honest with you, from the maybe 1,000 I have seen or I've attended to, 100 do their own research. By the time a doctor tells her you must do something, she doesn't question it because she's been groomed to obey. After birth, this same cycle of compliance, it continues, except for now she expects it from her child. With all of this being said, what does it look like in real life? How does a woman's birth experience and social conditioning affect how she parents? One is by emotionally disconnected mother. So a mother who feels disconnected and ignored during birth, it's more likely difficult for her to find an emotional connection with her own child. This is very simple because she was never given the permission to express or feel her own emotions. I'd like to give you an example. Like an example would be when the child cries, she would say, "Oh, stop crying, you'll be fine." Or something like, "Oh, you don't need to be so dramatic, it's nothing, just toughen up, be strong," and things like that. This is very clear picture. This is not because she doesn't love her child. This is what she knows. This was what was done to her. It's the only thing she knows. There is a saying, you cannot give that which you don't have. And this is a very, very typical example of that. So my second example will be the controlling mother. Mother who feels very powerless during birth might become a mother who is over controlling in parenting. She might not allow her child to make decisions on her own. She may want to micromanage every aspect of a child's life. This one is a big one that I see all the time. She is likely to become anxious when the child shows any sign of independence. Again, I want to make it very clear here. This is not about bad parenting. This is about trauma experience. So this trauma is coming either from the childhood or how the mother was birthed or how she gave birth. It is not something that we want to just overlook and act like it never happened. Trauma doesn't go away on its own. That's one thing I have noticed. It has to be dealt with, whether childbirth trauma or childhood trauma. Okay, beautiful sisters, I'm so grateful that you have stayed this long with me. And this is the final part, my most favorite. I mean, for those who watch my videos, you know I always have the favorite one. And that is breaking the cycle. What would we do with all of this information that we've received today? How do we break free? How do we break this cycle? In my opinion, it should all start with awareness. If you were silenced while you were in labor, I want you to take your time to recognize where you're most likely silencing your child. If on the other hand, you were made to feel powerless, then I want you to take your time and ask this question: am I unintentionally forcing compliance on my child? And finally, if you were dismissed during labor or childbirth or while you were growing up, you want to take some time to validate your own feeling. And by so doing, you can also validate the feelings of your child. And most importantly, birth matters. If you're pregnant or you're planning to have more children, I want you to learn about birth options, find support, and demand respect. And this is because when a mother gives birth feeling safe and supported, she in turn sets the foundation for a child who feels safe and supported. If this has resonated with you, I want you to reach out to me. Let us have this conversation. You can DM me. You can also write in the comment below. And of course, on my website, you see my email address. Because we as women are not just birthing babies. We're birthing the next generation. In other words, birthing Earth. And the way by which we are treated during this process will shape the world that we create. Thank you for joining me on Inner Compass in the episode of Breaking the Cycle. Also, thank you for taking your time to listen. And remember, motherhood isn't about repeating the cycle of the past. It's about creating the future. Until next episode, see you soon.